In the last lesson, we made a reminder app that utilized the append, insert, and remove blocks of code for list. Before we begin, make sure you've submitted your functioning app in code.org. Today's lesson is Unit 5, Lesson 5, Loops Explore. Although there are instructions in code.org, this is mostly a hands-on lesson. It is helpful if you use the Google Slides in full presentation mode because there are animations on the screen. To warm up, let's get some materials. You can use anything you have available. These symbols will be used throughout the presentation. In today's activity, we're going to explore loops using Pretend Robot. You will move a robot around the game board following commands. Here's the first one, move forward. Use this command to write a program to move the robot to the purple box. This code is repetitive. How can we simplify it? By using a while loop. Here's how a while loop works. While something is true, the code in the while loop runs over and over until that thing is no longer true. Let's try it together. Let's run this program. Set up your board with the robot in the same place as the robot on the screen. We are going to run each step of the loop together. Read the code and complete the first round of the loop. You may want a sticky note or scrap piece of paper to keep track of the value in the variable. For round 2, we're going to do the same loop again. For round 3, we'll continue again. Round 4, we'll continue the same way. What happens in round 5? The code looped 4 times, so the while loop stopped because the Boolean became false. Remember that Boolean or loops only work when something is true. This exits the loop. Run this program on your board. What happens? Why does the robot run off the board? This is an example of an infinite loop. The program never ends because the steps will always be less than 4. Because the value was set to 0 initially, and there was no counter code like in the previous slide. You have a new command called turn right. Run this program on your board. Well, where will the robot end up? This program will run 4 times until as it is true. Now it's false and the program stops. A while loop has 3 distinct parts. A counting variable set to an initial value. A Boolean expression, which checks the condition of that variable. And lastly, a statement which increases or decreases the variable that is being checked. Without this last piece of code, you will create an infinite loop that may crash your browser. A for loop combines all 3 of these parts into one statement. A loop is an example of an iteration, a repetitive portion of an algorithm which repeats a specified number of times or until a given condition is met. Either side of the screen is appropriate code, but to save lines of code, the one on the right is most commonly used by programmers. You have a new command called turn left. Follow the code with your robot. Run it again. Run the code again. When the statement becomes false, it stops because 3 is not less than 3, so this is false. Click to see a new program. Where will the robot end up? The program is still true and will run again. The code stops at 3 because the Boolean is finally false. Click to see a new program. Where will the robot end up? Two is not less than 2, so this is false and the exit begins. We're going to add some new commands to make things more challenging. Move left, move right, move forward, and backwards. These evaluate to true or false and are dependent on the direction that the robot is facing. If a barrier or a wall is in the way, the Boolean expression evaluates to false. Run the program on your board. Where will the robot end up? These are simple Booleans. that can be true or false. Run the program on your board. Where will the robot end up? The robot can move right, turn right, and move forward. Since it can no longer move forward because of the dark circle, that part of the if statement is false. So the code will now move to the else part. So now it will turn left and move forward again. Now, if all of the parts of the if-else statement are false, the loop will stop. Click Run on your board. Where will the robot end up? This loop will run until all the booleans are false. Now it's turn to write your own programs. Set up a game board and add as many barriers as you'd like. Write a program using a for loop to navigate the board. Figure out the starting and ending points of the robot. Although I'm not grading this activity, make sure that you understand the basic concept for today, as we will move deeper into loop programming soon. The key takeaways for today is a while loop runs as long as something is true. It is easily possible to create an infinite loop by accident because you may set parameters that can never become true or never become false. A for loop, on the other hand, runs for a specific number of times, then stops. Let's wrap up. You can watch this video on your own. Make sure you understand the relationship between iterations and for loops. Today's assignment is to make a private comment in Google Classroom that explains the difference between a while loop and a for loop.